Okay, we have a lot of people today, so it makes it a little more interesting. So I'm going to call our meeting to order.
No, Greg,
Yep.
I need to make sure we are recording.
Okay, sorry, I'll wait one more minute.
Jazz has started recording.
We good? Okay, sorry folks. All right, so I'm going to call our meeting to order. Today is August 18th, 2020. Today is a joint, the portion of the meeting is a joint meeting with the North Kingstown Town Council, and we've invited them all to take part as well. We have a good crowd, so it's hard for me to pick out from the names, and I apologize for the format. But going through the rest of my speech here, pursuant to the executive orders of the governor, this meeting is being conducted electronically and is available by Zoom, and also is being streamed on the North Kingstown School Committee's website as well. So I'm going to start by asking, just want to check in if we have members of the town council here as well. Anybody? So what we'll do, I'm just sort of scrolling through names. I apologize for folks watching. Zoom meetings are always a bit trickier than regular.
I'm in Glasgow. I think they are in the room at 100.
Oh, all right, all together. Okay, I did not realize that.
But I'm not sure that if you can hear them or not.
Okay, so what I'd suggest is that the town of North, I don't know if there's somebody who can answer this question for me. I want to make sure that they can speak.
Right, it looks like Jeanette's on, and it says connecting to audio.
Okay, great.
So,
Those are the people I was looking for here.
yep. Still says connecting.
So folks in the audience, I apologize with the technical parts of getting this running, but I want to make sure that we have everybody able to hear and everything before we go too much further. Jeanette, are you able to talk, or I'm trying to, I don't see that you have audio. Or any town councilor or Mr. Mollis? Okay, I see Mary Brimer's name.
Yeah, and I see another one that says Town of North Kingstown, but that one still says it's connecting to audio also.
Yeah, and I texted Jeanette. I think you're trying to get.
Okay. Sorry, folks, we're just trying to get the technical part of this working so that we're certain the town council members are able to participate as well.
Okay, can we hear okay? Because I can't hear. Are we on mute with that?
I don't President Mancini, I can hear you now.
Great. We can hear you also.
Are you folks all together?
We are, we have to officially call our meeting to order. I assume you did also, correct?
Well, we were just getting there, and I reached out to make sure you folks could hear us, and you couldn't, so we kind of paused. So, all right, so I will keep the town of North Kingstown person as the primary for you folks. So I'll just sort of start over. So where we were, as we were saying, today is August 18th, 2020. This is a joint meeting of the North Kingstown School Committee and Town Council. I apologize to the folks in the audience for the technical problem getting that running, but we now have the Town Council online. So President Mancini, I'll let you handle calling your part to order.
Pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-16, notice of this meeting has been posted on the Secretary of State's website. Next agenda item is a salute to the flag. So I don't know if you want to make your notice or your statutory notice requirement.
Sure, we do that as well, so that is as good a time as any. So I'll ask if everyone could please rise, and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let me make a couple suggestions, if I may. At one of the last town council meetings, you know, majority of the members of our body heard from a number of parents, and consequently, they suggested we have a joint meeting, and we appreciate your indulgence with that. I'd like to start off this portion of the meeting as maybe does it make sense for you to briefly recap where we're at and provide the council with any updates? Does that make sense?
So what we have on our agenda is we have Dr. Auger has prepared a superintendent's report with an overview of the school reopening plan and where things are. One thing I do want to mention is, you know, as you may recall, members of the council, when we scheduled the timing of this meeting, it was done specifically on this date with the understanding that Governor Raimondo was going to be announcing her choice of school reopening plans on August 17th. As Dr. Auger, I'm sure, is going to mention in a minute, that did not happen. She's put off everything. So unfortunately, we don't have as firm of an answer for you as to what path things are going down as we would have liked. But with that being said, Dr. Auger, I'll turn things over to you for a presentation, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Blasball. And good evening, everyone. Good evening, members of the Town Council and School Committee. I appreciate having your attention on this tonight. It's been a great deal of work for the school department to get to where we are right now. I want to stress to everybody that, you know, this is where I left off the last time I presented this plan, that our plan is certainly evolving. There have been a lot of things happening over this summer, including the 2-week delay in the opening of school, and a number of other factors that just keep, you know, working into our plans and affecting them one way or another. So this is not easy. There are a lot of us, the whole community is learning to accept, you know, very different conditions of how we would be doing school in the fall. And that goes for every community, obviously, in the United States and probably in the world, in terms of trying to figure out how we do schooling, which is an institution that is meant for almost the opposite of social distancing when you think about it. Classrooms, auditoriums, cafeterias, buses, they're all made to bring people together. And they're a big part of our community for that reason. And that's where we meet one another and you know, learn to be a part of one's town community and be a member of North Kingstown, for instance, by going through our public school system. So having to do this in such a way that turn our schools into something where, social distancing is a priority is certainly a major chore. And I want to, give kudos to my administrative team in particular for, spending all summer, working at this every day to get to where we are now. It is not perfect, and we've got some things that we still would like to accomplish, but I think we're, relative to the rest of Rhode Island, certainly in pretty good shape right now. So, as I mentioned, we've been charged with putting together a reopening plan, and this plan brings together, the Department of Education, Department of Health, parents, students, teachers, staff, leadership team, school committee, and here we are tonight as well with the town council. It's a big community-wide discussion. This is another phase in that discussion, and we are charged with, putting together 4 potential scenarios for full in-person sessions, or a partial in-person or a hybrid plan, a limited in-person and a full distance learning as needed due to the health conditions and the possible resurgence of COVID-19. And I know some of you have seen some of these slides before, so I'm going to try to go through them relatively quickly tonight so it makes for more discussion time with the school committee and town council. Also derived reopening plans, there are these 4 scenarios: the full in-person plan, the partial in-person plan, which allows for some more space. They're not as straightforward as they may seem, and I'll explain that as I go along. The limited in-person plan means that pretty much most of us are distance learning, except for vulnerable populations, whether that be students with IEPs or other conditions where they really need to be in one reason or another, to try to make room for that. And then, obviously, if the resurgence of the virus gets too high, we would go back to full distance learning. And these, our expectation is, would be called by the governor and the Department of Health. For the full in-person plan for North Kingstown, the elementary and middle schools are in every day. All students, the students and staff are organized in pods, and there is limited interaction with larger groups. So that means that a typical classroom in an elementary school would really do most of their interacting just with that classroom. And that teacher and certain teaching assistants and certain elective teachers who would probably come more so coming into the room than them leaving the room and going to, say, the music room or the art room. And that's just to kind of keep that group relatively isolated. If there's a need to quarantine any student or any class, it would likely mean you would have to quarantine the whole school that way. That is the thinking. At the middle level, they're organized in teams. And again, if there are 4, classes on a team, they would pretty much travel together as a group as well, and limiting those interactions. What we would be doing is certainly modifying transportation. Our buses on a normal sequence could handle about 72 elementary students on the biggest bus in the day. That number had been reduced to 22. It is now ride and the Department of Health to us with 36. That certainly limits what we can do, and we've done a lot to encourage self-transportation. Talk about the high school schedule and how that encourages juniors and seniors to do more driving, and trying to find creative ways to allow for more buses to handle more kids, particularly at the elementary and middle level where there's heavier ridership. So at the high school level, that means 50% of students attend school on each day, an alternating A-B type of thing, where in person on one day, and then they would be doing asynchronous distance learning on the next day, and they would be taking 4 classes. Normally a high school schedule at North Kingstown High School is 8. There are high schools that have this 4x4 schedule that I described, even previous to COVID, and there are good reasons to have it. We obviously selected what is normally known as an AB schedule, with 8 periods running all at the same time over 2 days. But in this case, we chose this because it limits the number of interactions with high school students. It's much harder and impossible to put high school students in those kind of self-contained groups. So the less interaction they have with, larger numbers of students, the better. Our high school being one of the biggest in the state of Rhode Island also makes it very difficult to have the whole student body in at one time, particularly when you're thinking of entering the building, exiting, passing times, that kind of thing. All I can think of is that picture that we've all seen on social media from Georgia, and you get an idea of what North Kingstown High School always looked like, previous to COVID. So really concerned about that piece of it. Our expectations of all students and staff in this scenario, and in all scenarios, would be wearing face masks or face covering. There is actually an agenda item tonight with that as a mandate, and that obviously, what my proposal is in this policy proposal is that if there's a child, for one reason or another, who is refusing, we would certainly work with that child and talk to their parents and try to gain compliance on that, but this is such an important issue that we wouldn't be able to let it stand, particularly for too long, and therefore we would have the student not engage in person but do a distance learning format, which I'll explain in a little while. We're going to have an emphasis in social distancing and regular hand washing. The elementary and middle classrooms would be in stable group pods, and high school capacity, because now you're sorting by the alphabet and all grades. That means every classroom now is cut in half. So the largest a high school class gets is 28 previous to the pandemic, and so while most of our classes are somewhere in the neighborhood of, say, 18 to 24, that would obviously now be cut in half. So most classes now would be somewhere between, say, 10 and 15. And that would allow the high school more room to spread out and possibly even an opportunity, if everyone's socially distanced enough, to take their face masks off during the class. There will be no large gatherings in cafeterias, auditoriums, gyms, or playgrounds. And our extracurricular programming would be diminished greatly. We're working with the Department of Education and the Rhode Island Interscholastic League, and we haven't gotten any firm word from them about, to what extent sports would be running or which sports would be running, but all indications right now are that that would be significantly limited. In the full in-person scenario, the middle and high school students share the morning bus run. It's easier to do in the morning than on the way home because of the timing piece of getting to the next run. And so the high school would return home around 11:50, and the middle school would go to 1:45. There would be modified middle and high school stops. They may not be exactly the same stops that we are used to having. But a lot of this depends on things that are going on right now. I'm going to be talking about how we are assessing how many students are choosing distance learning and how many students are able to drive into the high school and how many of those students are going to carpool with other students who can drive with them. And all of that takes stress off of our bus run. The middle school is generally our largest bus run, and to combine that with part of the high school makes it even larger. So it's a tough run to make it work, but we needed to do this in order to get that additional elementary run. And I know that all of you, particularly in the town council and school committee, I know I have shared many conversations with you over the years about, the North Kingstown busing fleet. We normally talk about this in terms of start time as being a big, problem area in terms of getting a better start time. And that's because, our busing fleet is, I would say not, as large as it needs to be for a population that we have. So therefore, we're forced in a town that's pretty large geographically to go to 4 runs, and those 4 runs take a lot of time. And thus we have the earliest high school start time in the state and the latest elementary start time in the state for 3 of our elementary schools on regular time. So starting there, we're not a district that can easily just say, oh, we have all kinds of busing to help us when we have these severely limiting conditions. So the elementary bus runs are expanded from 2 to 3. Hamilton Elementary is our largest elementary school. That would have an 8 o'clock start time and roughly a 2:20 release. All the other L's will go at their regular time, but that takes a lot of stress off of that run. There's 3 schools, now it's only 2, and we can make those work. Particularly with the parents who let us know that they're willing to take care of their own transportation. Though these situations, our transportation department is hard at work. We're just getting these numbers in right now about everyone who has committed to using the buses and who has committed to driving and working out these stops. And so we're, in that respect, where we would normally be sending out postcards right now to families letting you know about your stop, they're really just getting going and creating these runs and making this work. So it's a lot of work condensed into a very short period of time right now to get to that September 14th start time that we need. As I mentioned, when we get into the bus assignment, you'll probably also get a seat assignment with it, and that will be yours. And it's not like we can have different kids on the bus on different days. It's got to be the same groupings, and you got to be sitting in the same places. And masks are absolutely mandatory. We do not anticipate any changes to special education transportation at this time, and the details on the transportation options will be coming as soon as we have them to our families. The hybrid and partial in-person scenario.
Can I interrupt you, Phil? The hybrid scenario is an alternative scenario, correct?
Yes, the hybrid scenario is actually, most people call it hybrid, but the ride is called the partial in-person. And it's a little misleading because Department of Education wrote back to us and said that they would like the elementary to be prioritized to still be fully in person under this scenario, and that the middle and high school would have less time. So in this scenario, the middle and high school have on the Monday is all distance learning for everybody, and then they alternate 50% by alphabet on Tuesday and Thursday, and Wednesday and Friday for the rest of the district, middle and high school together.
Before you go into the hybrid model, just so I understand, right now you're positioning yourself to go into the full in-person model, correct?
Not necessarily. And I can explain. So Governor Raimondo is going to be letting us know the week of August 31st what model she expects districts to use. So what she is telling us to do is to be prepared for any of the following models.
I see.
The reason we had scheduled this meeting for today was she was...
I know. She wants to have a tell set. Correct.
Right.
Well, here's my concern. I want the members of our council to have feedback to you, and your presentation is very thorough, but I'm just afraid, I know you've got other agenda items. I was hoping that we could maybe stop here, hear comments from the members of our council. Does that make sense, or is that going
to... keep the rest of the presentation to about 5 minutes if you like.
Good, why don't you do that?
I'll try to be quick. So the partial in person, I explained that, and there's always this need for a vulnerable student. So even under the limited, where most of us will be at home, there is a provision for having, students with whatever the special need happens to be, still come in. So we need to make some provisions for that. The full distance learning scenario, obviously, is that everyone is now working remotely. And we have invested in a communication program called Canvas, learning management system that's going to help us along those lines. This part is important. So based on a tentative agreement right now between the administration and and teachers union, we hope to be announcing in the next day or so that we would be looking at the distance learning plans for those who want it. Right now, without even seeing what we're looking to do, we already have roughly 10% of our students and their parents have told us that they want distance learning only. That so what the plan will look like in general sense is that at the secondary level, those students would follow the classes that they would normally follow, but they would do so from home, and that teachers would be providing we would be looking to set up a cadre of teachers to work as full-time distance learning teachers with those students who need it. That's a major scheduling challenge, and so the next thing that we need to do is ascertain how many families are looking for distance learning. In other districts similar to NK, that number is somewhere between 20 and 30%. And as I mentioned, that already in NK, without seeing these ideas yet, people have told us that we already have about 10% of our population interested in this. There's a playbook given from RIDE about what to do when someone tests positive, whether a student or a teacher, so we expect to be following that with the rest of the state. This is put together by the Department of Health. We have screening tools for staff and students, kind of a survey that parents would fill out and staff would fill out before entering the building on any day. There is an updated calendar, obviously starting on September 14th, so that's something that the school committee is going to take up tonight. And, the challenges and the unknowns. I know this is the topic, and this is where I'll end tonight. Really concerned about staffing more than anything else. We have great staff, and, they have concerns about their health. A number of them are of ages that are supposed to be very watchful for, possibly, being exposed to the virus. And so they're worried. And even those who, whether they're worried or not, and come into work, may right away or at some point need to quarantine. And so the ability to consistently provide needed in-school staffing, including substitutes, is going to be incredibly difficult. And I just want to be honest with everybody. I'm worried that we'll get to a position early on, sooner or later, that we get into a point where there just aren't enough people in the building, adults in the building, to be able to do in person on a regular basis. And all districts are concerned about this. There are not a ton of people coming out who, looking to be substitute teachers right now. And if anything, our staffing, people are announcing, that they're retiring early. Not a lot, but enough to make a difference. So there's more of a need right now to find good staff to replace some people who've been with us for many years and have great reputations in our school department, and we hate to see them go over this. But that's what this is coming to. And the other piece is funding. Federal and state aid are still unknown. We do not have those numbers yet. We were talking about this back in April, as you recall. And so many expenses are still unknown and may vary due to changing conditions. Look at any particular area, whether it's cleaning costs, whether it's busing, whether it's what we're using with technology, what we're going to need for staff who are coming in. A lot depends on how much of the year is spent in distance learning for everybody or not. So there's never been a more challenging time to prepare for a school year. And I'll just leave it with that, and Mr. Blasball, I'll give it back to you if you want to start some questions or discussion.
Sure. And I mean, I think I heard the presentation. I think the school committee members are pretty familiar with what we're dealing with. We hear it. Councilman Seedy, any questions from the town council for the superintendent?
I'm sure we will. I know I will, but I'm going to let others comment first. Does anyone on the council want to comment about the proposed school plan to the school committee or to the superintendent?
I have a number of questions. Do you mind if I just jump into them? And I would just say that I appreciate the incredibly difficult and challenging position that you're all in, and the tremendous logistics that go into it under varying circumstances and a lot of unknowns. And I think a lot of the hardest part of 2020 is all of us dealing with varying levels of uncertainty, but you're responsible for a lot of students and families. So I appreciate the work that you put into this. You mentioned that 10% of the parents or 10% of the student population responded that they're not going to return to school. Is that for the fall semester, or is that the entire calendar year?
So they once we have this agreement, we plan on putting a commitment form to families, and we plan on asking them, first step is for the first semester. So they would be committing to this for the first semester. What we're trying to avoid is having students kind of come in and out of that format too easily.
Right, it's disruptive.
Just because of planning and logistics, you need to set up classes. They're going to have capacities, whether they're distance or in person, and it's going to be really difficult to move in and out of that. So we're asking for a semester commitment right now.
Okay, and of the 10%, can you give me an approximate range for elementary, middle school, and the high school? And I guess maybe the number I'm most interested in right now is the high school population. What percentage has decided not to come back?
Okay, I don't know that specifically. I think it's generally, the last time I looked at the numbers, generally 10% across the board, give or take, obviously. At the elementary level, I mentioned that we're looking at setting up this distance learning academy, and that right now may mean we're at the point where we're looking at 2 classes in each grade level to be setting up as distance learning. In some cases, that may mean that we're pulling from classes that are in school, if it works out that way, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's a nice, neat set of 20 kids coming from one grade at one elementary school to make that work. So this may require some significant reshuffling of staff, people who weren't doing classroom teaching, maybe doing classroom teaching, that sort of thing. So, but generally speaking, those numbers are in the 10% range at the moment. But that doesn't necessarily matter as much, because we were looking just to get a sense of the interest. This week, once we send out this commitment, we'll really know for sure. Other districts are reporting 20 to 30%.
Okay. What percentage of students have opted out of busing and will do self-transportation?
I don't have that number in front of me. Transportation Department has that. We're not absolutely sure that those are not, he's still working on, are those actually students that have already opted out of busing, even in, non-COVID times. So we have our numbers. They're right now a little hard to work at the middle and high school level in particular. And we were even looking at the idea of having an additional school run. And I can't imagine starting the high school any earlier or going any later with our L's. But to make that work with everyone who said they need a bus ride, that may need to happen. I think that is certainly helped, and probably won't need to be happening now that the number from the Department of Health has changed from 22 to 36 on a bus. So we think we can do it with the bus rides that I mentioned.
Okay. Have the parents of special needs children been surveyed in this process?
We've had meetings with the parents of special ed children, and we, through our CLAC program, and we are in regular contact about, that, IEP, the first letter there is individual. So there's a lot of individual discussions, and a lot of those decisions are made based on the student's IEP. So, if we have 500 students in the district that are designated with IEPs, but that is a very big range. And most of those students are in regular classrooms for most of their day, and some of them are in, very profound kinds of situations and may not even be, in one of our school buildings, but at a special program. So there's a wide variety there.
So they have been surveyed, particularly those that have a higher need and are receiving special services through arranged in coordination with the school.
You know, I'm not sure what you would mean by survey, but we are aware of their needs and there are people reaching out to them, yeah.
Okay. A few months ago, after the budget session, there was a school committee meeting where it was decided that I believe it was 40 members received pink slips from the school department. I'm curious, have those folks been hired back? At the time, there was so much uncertainty about whether school would be back in before June, or whether school would be back in September, and it was in the hopes that those pink slips were issued that it would be a temporary situation, they'd be rehired. What is the status of those staff members?
By and large, they have been rehired. This gets a little mixy because there are also a lot more situations than we had thought, where we had more early retirements and things like that. So there are plenty of jobs to fill. But that being said, again, with the distance learning piece unknown, we're going to be doing a lot of work in the next few days once those survey numbers come in to figure out exactly what we need in each place. And that may mean, a little bit more than what we were looking for. But to answer your question, yes, they've been brought back.
Can you share how many retirements have been filed or reported?
I don't have that number in front of me.
Do we anticipate needing to hire more school nurses, I would say temporarily for this school year, to assist with temperature taking, identifying? Is that something that we need right now?
Well, we're fortunate enough to have a school nurse in every building. So we feel like we've got that piece of it okay. I mean, we can certainly use more. In that respect, we feel we're okay.
Okay. One of the concerns that the school committee members have shared with me is that if Warwick did not return back to in-person learning and went virtual, which they announced last week that they were, that would present a staffing challenge to us here because we have a high percentage of Warwick resident teachers that are on our staff. What is the actual impact? Can you give us an idea? How many? I know I have the list of.
I don't have that specific list in front of me, but I'm concerned about it. And I know that this is going to affect other communities as well. And there's kind of a trickle effect. I think the more that districts, go to distance learning, and even before that, there are a number of districts that, in their full in-person model, have a program where even at their elementary level, it's basically 2 days a week where the kids are in. 2. So that presents a major child care issue for those families, particularly, and for any parent at all that you would feel for, but also for those who need to be teaching in person in our district. So it's going to be a real challenge that we're going to have to deal with, and we just don't know yet to what extent. In some cases, some of those families will be able to find child care, and in other cases, they may not.
Okay. Internships was a concern that parents brought up to me about whether or not that would be available, and I guess it might have been an assumption that it would not be available just because of all of the social distancing going on. Can you comment on the program already in place that the school department has?
There's no change to the program that's in place. Most of our internships revolve around our career and tech program, and we have, probably 15 to 25 in any particular given year based on the programs. I don't have that number in front of me, I wish I did. But there's also, for kids who are not part of the career and tech program, they can work with their guidance counselor and organize so that in the semester they can get a credit for an internship.
Okay.
That's always been the case. It's not special to COVID situation.
Do you know if there's been a reduction in employers willing to host that program as a result of COVID?
I don't. I haven't heard that. So in some of these cases, when we do this in the future, if you get these questions to me in advance, I can do that research and find out for you.
Okay, and the final question, and I'm going to send these over because I would like some specifics back on the surveys regarding the kids that are going to do distance learning and opting out of busing, but a concern that was raised by a number of parents and a number of students is that it was a rocky start. Most everybody was doing the best that they could with distance learning. To scramble and offer what you did in a week's time frame was really impressive. But it was difficult for a lot of folks. And so the reports that myself and other counselors have heard from parents and students is that occasionally a teacher would not be present for their virtual classroom or Google Meetups. And what I want to know is what is the process that you're going to have in place so if that is a problem that persists, a parent or student can bring it to your attention without fear of retaliation. And the reason I bring this up is when I mentioned it, I ended up getting attacked in the local newspaper by your NEA president for bringing it up. So when I say that these people are in fear of retaliation, it's legitimate. So the concern is if somebody doesn't show up for their classroom, how does a parent or student bring that to your attention and how will you address that?
Okay, if there's ever any condition at all, whether it's what you just described or any other situation where someone is dissatisfied with the work of an employee in the district, they can bring it to their administrator and we check it out. There were a lot of different situations for distance learning in the spring, and I appreciate the compliment that we did do a lot with very little time. There were a variety of different schedules out there with the level of engagement. In some cases, those were brought to us by the commissioner to say, okay, we're going to have a professional day on Friday, and students are not going to be given any additional work. In some cases, that was done with the planning of the school department or a particular school to say we're going to focus on, English and math on Tuesday and Thursday, and social studies and science on the other days. To really just kind of focus the kids a little bit better and not have them to go into so many different rooms. So there are a lot of different ideas out there, a lot of different things in play. We expect that there's a full distance learning model. We're going to do everything we can to have, a full day following the schedule as much as we can to make that work. It's, there are trade-offs. There are a number of districts in the state. Warwick is the first person to declare it, but I can tell you in my discussions with superintendents all around the state that there's a lot of talk in a lot of districts about districts going full distance right from the beginning because there's so many variables in, bringing kids into school. And obviously everyone's worried about safety. Now, I don't begrudge them their decisions. They're working in their districts and, need to make those. We feel, or at least I feel, that, the plan that we have is a good one. It gets kids in front of teachers enough that they have regular contact, which is very important to me and I think to the kids. And can stay engaged. And that's important. Now, if the governor says, the conditions out there with COVID are just too much, and we need to go to a hybrid of full distance learning, we're going to do that. And we're going to make the best of it. More now than we did then. Having the new LMS system is going to help us. But, that's what we're going to do. And, in cases where anyone has had a complaint about, the interaction of their child with their particular teacher and has been brought to my attention or any of the principal's attention, we have addressed it.
Are there any additional resources that you can think of since we last all met together in the budget session that the town council or the community can assist you with?
Well, that's a good question, and we may want to open that up to the school committee as well. I would just like to know, with some certainty, more about, what the budget numbers are going to end up being. I think I'm relatively certain that there's going to be less funding than we're used to, but I'm not sure what we're looking at federal aid. I've heard some rumors about that, but I've also heard rumors that those votes would have happened days, if not weeks ago, and they haven't happened. But also, as we ended our discussion in April, the state aid piece is a problem. If we don't get that state aid, and with the pluses and minuses that we're incurring, our expenses turn out to be about what we projected, we're going to need more funding. And I'm hoping that funding can be assisted by the town council, certainly.
We certainly want to assist. We just need to know where we need to know that you need it before it's too late.
Well, there's just so many moving parts and so many unknowns. Even just adding to the cleaning to the extent that we need to add for that. If that goes for a full year, that all by itself could account for all of the federal money that we are looking to gain by this next stimulus. That item alone. So now there may be other areas where we're finding some savings, particularly if just to throw out an example, there's plenty of examples, but one might be the sporting program. If that's not running as much as it normally does, we'll probably have some savings. Figuring out what all those pluses and minuses are going to be is just going to take some time.
All right, I think I've taken up enough time. Who else?
Yes, I get a couple of comments, but does anyone else, Gary? You all set? Okay, Dick, you all set?
I have a couple of quick questions. One is, has the state talked about emergency certificates?
I'm not sure what you mean by that, Dick.
For the teachers, for people who don't have a certificate at the present time?
Not yet. No.
Okay. What's the current student population at the high school?
About 1,500 students.
Oh, it's gone up quite a bit. I just asked, I'm not ready for a response.
Feedback.
I'm sorry. Hello?
Hello?
Okay. I don't want an answer right now, but have you or would you consider double sessions at the high school?
That has been considered. It would require a lot of different logistics, and especially in terms of our busing, which I don't know that we have the capacity to do, particularly with all the other runs that need to occur. But that being said, Dick, every idea is on the table, and things that we're working on this week, even just a couple of weeks ago, I wouldn't be sure that would be part of the equation. So we're dealing with a lot of different conditions all the way through, and I'm just not in a position to say we're certainly going to rule any idea out, that's for sure.
That's fine. I want to thank you folks for meeting with us and thank the other members of the town council for taking the time to be here. This is a very important issue, and good communication coming back to us in a timely fashion will help us deal with your problems as we can help you, whether it be funding or what else. But thank you for your time tonight.
Okay, I do have a couple comments for you, Phil.
Sure.
I know that you guys and ladies have been working very, very hard, but I do think the reason why we're here is because some members of the public are frustrated and maybe have not felt that their voices have been heard. I'm not saying you didn't listen. I'm just saying that some folks may feel that's the perception. I'm going to make a suggestion, and you can do with what you want, but as you move forward in figuring out the specific policies and guidelines for specific schools, I would encourage you, to the extent that you can, is to engage the parents and the students. They may be able to help you tweak things, maybe not. But when I say engage them, I mean more like the principals, the principal level. I don't know if that's going to be a logistical nightmare, but I would ask you to take that into consideration. engaged both the parents and the students, particularly the high school students, but more the parents, I guess, the middle and elementary school. But communication is the key, and I know you've been working hard, and please don't take that as a slight, but just a suggestion, and I know that we support you, and we'll do everything we can to continue to support you. So with that, I don't have anything else unless Mr. McKay does.
Hi, Phil. How you doing? Great work, everyone. Thank you very much. Just a couple of things. What happens on the 180-day cycle? Because now the kids really won't be in school for. Is the Board of Education just going to bypass the 180-day requirement?
Well, right now the number is 177 based on this new calendar. So they extended the school year a little bit at the end, and they took some of the first week or so of days and turned them into professional development days to give schools more time to prepare.
Okay. Have you taken? Are you taking advantage of your more tech-savvy teachers to help them work out a scenario that would best work for everybody? In other words,
what I can tell you is we are adding a major, learning management system. I'm not sure to what extent you're familiar with that term, but a lot of people will recognize the term, Google Classroom. This system is a far superior version of that, and will help with the communication with students and their teachers, with loading lessons, with loading videos, be a one-stop shop for parents to see their students, any communications that are coming from their classrooms, and all in the same format, which is important. Parents have talked to us about that they're getting certain kinds of communications from one teacher and other kinds from another, and it's hard to keep up with, whether I'm supposed to be looking at an email now, or looking at, a program that the district has, or a program that one teacher is using but not the other. So this is a way to kind of put all of that together and to make the communication stronger.
all right, just two more things. So, have you reached out to parents who are willing to physically come in and help out, or is that, with all the legal ramifications these days, a problem? Or in a situation like this where we're under the gun, are there parents who would have free time, who would be willing to come in and help out in limited capacity? And have you identified those areas where they could come in and help out, whether it be middle or elementary or even high school for that matter?
It's not that simple, Kerry. I wish it was. And we have a pretty strong volunteer program run by our links, and we are in contact with them about how to get involved. And so there's kind of a vetting process that goes through volunteerism and normal situation right from the beginning of the school year. We do have parents and other volunteers who will come in and help us with whatever it is we need help with in the school. This year that's a lot more difficult because now there's a really tight safety protocols about who can be in contact with whom. And so the elementary school, as I described it, for instance, is in these self-contained pods. So to bring people from outside of that group into that group, takes away from that self-contained element and makes it that much harder in terms of, tracing the contacts and that sort of thing, and introducing, what could be the virus into the community. So we're doing less of that than we would like. But
that's too bad, because we have a very engaged community that I think will reach out.
But these are, orders from the Department of Health that we're following.
All right. Last thing, Phil. I'm assuming that you and Ralph have to work out some logistics along with the police chief, because I can see a lot of parents driving a lot of children to school, and you're gonna have a lot of traffic issues at each one of the schools. So I hope you guys have all worked out where police details would be necessary and incorporate those police details and have a discussion early about that, because I can see a lot of extra traffic, a lot of vehicular traffic that normally you wouldn't see. So that's the only other comment that I have.
And on the list of things that, we could use from the town council and the town, and I have had, talks with Ralph about this, and I know Mary King has as well, that we are going to need, we're going to have to see how this looks, but we imagined early on that we're going to need some police details at our schools when people are entering and leaving, at least early on, until we get a sense of, what that looks like. And that costs money. And so any assistance that the town could give in that regard would be very much appreciated.
Okay. Thanks for all your help, you guys. Good luck with your adventure here. Adventure and learning. Bill?
Before you folks go, I know Mr. Jones has his hand up, and I just wanted to quickly mention, I thank you very much for, meeting with us this evening. And I can only stress that, these plans, and we've said this all along, that these plans are continuously evolving and changing, and the guidance is continuously evolving and changing. Just a perfect example is that the administration went through an entire transportation plan based on a set number of children allowed on each bus, and then miraculously that number jumped, which is good news. It still creates a challenge, but it requires redoing everything and looking to see what effect that has. And that's, sometimes day to day these things change. So we've had to adapt, move quickly and move the plans along as best as we can. And just when it comes down to brass tacks and dollars and cents, as Dr. Jay mentioned, when we talked in April, I would have never dreamed that we would be sitting here on August 18th without a state funding number, but we are.
Greg, excuse me, Greg, I think another member on the council wants to comment.
Jump in.
That's right. I don't want to interfere. Obviously, we're in trying times. This is between the governor and you guys. I think once we get a couple of weeks into this or whatever, and when you start to have some actual budget numbers that you can bring to us so that we have a good idea of what we can do to help, I think would be great. And, I can sit here and give you opinions and stuff all night long. My only, maybe one question is, if you get back into a distance learning thing, is it possible to do that in like small pods of 2 or 3 in each location where they get the social interaction and maybe some help and whatever, but yet if there was any tracing to be done, it's to just a very small group.
Yeah, that would probably be something that would have to be dependent on particular families working with one another. It would be probably too much for all of us to coordinate. But I'm sure that can happen. That, like I said, that would be up to families working with one another on that.
Phil, I did have one last question also, sorry.
Okay.
Distance learning for the people who are making commitments to distance learning, you had asked for a commitment for a full semester. I don't know, I've heard feedback that, is there any way, I understand your position, you want people flopping back and forth, but I don't know if half a semester is something to be considered. But I did get feedback on that, so I'd ask you to take a look at that. And if you're doing you want to stay firm with your commitment to a full semester, I respect that. But I know that's caused a little bit of angst. So.
Okay, and Greg, I just want you to know that communication means a lot to me too. I have responded to dozens of emails from concerned parents. I have spoken to groups of students. And I know that Dr. Morse at the high school has done a lot of that as well. The communication is happening, and I would welcome anyone to give me a call. I've had phone calls with parents, and to the extent that I can make time for that in my day, I will. And if it can't be today, I'll certainly call you back tomorrow or find a way to communicate with you at some point. I know
I appreciate that.
Is concerned. So.
And I know you're working hard. I know everyone over the school department's working very hard. So, Mr. Chairman, are we all set, or do you have any further comments on your end?
I'm all set, and I apologize for jumping over you. Ma'am, sorry, not a time for citizens' comments. So, Mr. Jones, I know he had his hand raised.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank the town councilors for meeting with us. Councilor McKay brought up the point I was going to raise, which involved the increased vehicular traffic, not only for the police, and I know, for example, Hamilton's been a dangerous intersection, but also by town ordinance, the town owns the high school complex roadways, so the extent that you all can help focus town assets to ensure the roadways there might support additional traffic, which we expect would be greatly appreciated, along with the obviously police support for vehicular traffic. I would just add, in response to, and I appreciate Councilor Brimer's comment. It's easy to ask for money, but some of the material support stuff would be greatly appreciated. I would just add that North Kingstown taxpayers pay 80 to 82%, depending on how you do the math, of local education. We probably have about 5 to 10% of the decision-making capability based on the guidance the state has, given us. I'm sure on the town side, you probably hear the same thing from town businesses about why 15 or why 11 o'clock. To the extent that you are a conduit with our General Assembly members, I would say please communicate the frustration that we are being asked to run up a hill with our hands behind our back and our legs tied, and the frustration you hear from the community is the same frustrations we share. If you want us to do something, then don't put so many roadblocks and obstacles for us to get it done.
Well, have you communicated that to them?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Bob, have you communicated that to them?
Well, we've communicated, through our ends and our advocacy group.
Okay.
But, more voices, the better.
Okay. Sure. All right. I think we can adjourn unless you go to your meeting.
Sure, if I can just speak briefly just for watching our meeting, because this is an unusual format. So just to explain to the members of the public watching, so we just are concluding a joint meeting with the town council that we scheduled for 6 p.m. The school committee is going to recess into an executive session that is not open to the public for some discussions, as we'll go through in a minute, for legal advice and litigation and some collective bargaining issues. And we're going to reconvene a public meeting again at 8 p.m. this evening. That meeting will go through the remainder of our agenda, including have a full public comment period. So people are welcome to chime in at that point. We just wanted to have this opportunity to meet the town council and scheduling wise with you folks. So once you guys conclude your part, we'll kind of separate out, and I'll continue on with the rest of our agenda here.
Yeah, I would just leave by saying that please keep in contact with us, and you've heard offers of assistance, and keep in communication, and we'll see what happens. Motion to adjourn. The motion adjourned by Mr. McKay, seconded by Mr. Welch. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the town council has adjourned, the school committee has not. So at this point, what I'm going to do is continue on with our agenda. And as I mentioned, for folks in the public, we're going to be having an executive session for about an hour. It's quite possible we might run a little late. I apologize, but we will reconvene an open meeting once we're finished with our discussions. So at this point, I would ask for a motion from a member of the school committee for a motion to recess to executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 4246-4 for discussion of legal advice and litigation, which is 42462A2, and collective bargaining, Rhode Island General Law 42465A2 for the NEA-NK. If I could have such a motion, please.
So moved.
Okay, I'll give you Mr. Mather, second from, I heard it. Sorry, who was it?
Jenny.
Jenny, okay, Ms. Hoskins. So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion to recess is unanimous. So we're going to recess to executive session. From a Zoom point of view, folks, what we're going to do Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I want to first of all thank you all very, very much for your patience. We spent a lot of time going over some of the issues that you'll be seeing us deal with this evening during our executive session, specifically with respect to some legal advice and some collective bargaining with our unions. I'm back to our regular public agenda today and call our meeting to order. And so again, this is a regular meeting of the North Kingstown School Department. Today is August 18th, 2020. If I could ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And if I could ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mr. Blasberg?
Here.
Mrs. Hildebrand? Here. Mrs. Hoskins? Here. Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Mather?
Here.
Mrs. Shaw? And Joe Bento? Thanks.
Okay. And are there any presentations or recognitions this evening?
Yes, I have one recognition. So I would like to recognize Mr. Richard Caruso. He's the president of Pyramid Manufacturing, and they are a business. They have several different locations. One of them happens to be in the Quonset Business Park. And Pyramid Manufacturing was kind enough to donate 200 face shields to the North Kingstown School Department. Dr. Ajay sent him a letter of thanks, but I wanted to thank him publicly. And I would also like to thank my husband, Stephen King, for making the connection for us to Mr. Caruso.
Thank you very much. That is a very welcome donation. And I was going to say, if you could please make sure we send a very nice letter. It sounds like you're already on that. Thank you. Okay, next item on our agenda are citizens' comments. So as always, we do ask if you could please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And a reminder that if you have any very specific questions, it's not a time for a question and answer session, but you can always submit those to the administration or members of the school committee. We'll be happy to get back to you with specific questions, but citizens' comment, your time to have 3 minutes to speak to all of us with any comments, suggestions, or anything that you might want to speak to us about. The way we handle that is we ask if you could please raise your hand. I already see at least one hand going up. For anyone who's not familiar with how that works in Zoom, if you go under the Participants tab, you should see a list of boxes that you could check, including one that says Raise Your Hand, and then I will call on you accordingly. And I'm just looking, I see one person on the phone, and I forgot, Mr. Waterman, can you remind me if you remember the buttons to hit to raise your hand? You might not remember. I'll just put you on the spot. Thanks. I'll call on this first person, and then I'll just mention how to do it if you are on the phone. So the first person who has their hand raised here is Alexander, so I'm going to call on you and ask if you could please state your name and address for the record, and you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, hi, my name is Bill Alexander, and I live at 211 Earl Drive. So my concern is really the same as it was about a month ago. I really think that the high school students need to be in person learning, as much as possible. And so, my goal, of course, is for them to be 5 days a week. But if I concede to your full in-person plan, which is, the alternating A-B days, they're still not even in school in person half of the time that they usually would be, in a normal school year. So I know this is not, a normal school year by any stretch of the imagination, but the variables keep changing, but your answer still remains the same. So, Dr. Ajay said that the buses can now be up to 50% capacity, where, I think the number was 36 kids on a bus, where it used to be only 22. And also Dr. Ajay said that already, without, with just the early information, at 10% at least of the student population wants to be online only. And you're already going to have half of the high school students in attendance on any given day. So you're able to reuse parking spaces. So more of the kids you're reusing parking spaces on, day A that you would be on day B. So more of the kids are actually able to drive to school. So that's even less kids. All of those things means, less kids on the bus, or more available for more kids on the bus, with up to 50% more, on the bus. So, Dr. Ajay said that it's really the buses that are the problem, and you're able to get everybody to school on time, but you're not able to get everybody home if they stay until 1:45. So, I just don't see how, with all of those things changing, how it really is the buses still, and, you know, could it be that, you know, that the teachers don't want to cover the lunch in the classrooms? Cutting 2 hours off of the school day may not seem like a lot, but when you add it up, that's, you know, at least say 25 minutes per class if you have 4 classes in a day instead of 1 hour per class. You're now at 1 hour and 20 minutes, 25 minutes per day, which is what they had in a normal school day. So there has to be something that you can do. Why can't Hamilton go back to their 9:20 to 3:40 time slot instead of the current plan's times? Larger school districts than ours, Cranston and Woonsocket, they have more kids in their high school than we do, and they're going to be in attendance on a full day. Same A/B schedule, but a full day. They're not going home at lunch after 4 hours. I would just urge you to please look at this again. Our high school kids are getting shortchanged already. Just please try and think outside the box. There must be something that we can do. I'd love to see the data behind some of the different options, but, you know, when Mrs. Breimer asked for some data, it didn't seem like you had it at the ready on some of her questions. So it just makes me wonder if you're just making, you know, assumptions and just folding the cards in, you know, without actually looking at all of the data. There must be a way to keep them in school the full day. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Waterman, did you get, I saw you mention an alternative in the chat. Did you get the phone way to do it?
I'll have it for after the next speaker.
Okay, sorry. It's pound something, I just remember. Sorry. And I apologize for putting you on the spot. All right, so next person I'm going to call on is Pam Pinero.
Pam Pinero, 710 Slocum Road. I want to thank everyone for all their time and effort. I get these are very unprecedented times and difficult scenarios. What I would like to see over the next month, I can totally understand the big picture plan, but I would like to see some more details given as far as logistics of, have you put 36 people on a bus and exited them out of the bus and gotten them into a school? What are you going to do with those children? How are you going to queue them up for their classrooms so that they're not interacting with other pods of children? Or if they're eating lunch in their classroom, I know, as I said last time, I work in a nursing home, so I'm familiar with a lot of Department of Health regulations in our facility. Like, what are the kids going to do with their mask when they're eating? Is there going to be a place for them to store the mask? There's sanitary issues with that. I would like more details over the coming months. I do believe kids can return to school safely in this environment with everything I've seen. I need more details. I would like more details in the plans, the specifics. I'd like an email from the principal of the school that my children go to. It's great to hear from the top administration, but the principal and the people at the school are going to be the ones executing these plans. And I know firsthand that plans that are made by the administration in my facility, once implemented, bring up more questions and concerns. And once you put those in play, they look different. It's one thing to have them on paper, but it's another thing to actually run them. I'd like to know what the classrooms look like. I'd like to see a picture of a classroom. Are there desks instead of tables now? Did you reduce the number of chairs? Those kind of things that are specific to each school. I'd like to know more about the ventilation system at my kids' school, and I'm sure other parents could use some more details with the communication. I know it's a lot of details and everything leads to more questions. I understand that, but I think some more details coming directly from the principal or someone from our school that our kids go to. We have more personal relationships as parents with those individuals than we do with the administration, who is a little bit more removed on a day-to-day in our lives. I think that is it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And next person is Erin Watson.
Hello, Erin Watson from 180 Orchard Woods Drive. I have a high school junior, and I echo almost everything that Bill Alexander said. I do want to thank everyone, first of all, for their hard work, but I do have to admit that I feel so much focus has been on making the elementary school and middle school scenarios work, and the high school students are being sacrificed. They're only getting 2 to 3 days in person max, and with those 2 to 3 days, they end at 11:50 due to busing the elementary school students and the middle school students home. The 4-4 plan is extremely unfair to any AP students. I really don't understand the logic behind that at all. Trying to front load all APs into one semester and try to remember for 4 months while learning 4 new classes and then take the AP exams. And the asynchronous teaching, really do not understand that one bit. Teachers should be teaching from 7:15 to 1:45. Keep it a regular day. So the elementary school and middle school students seem to get a pretty regular schedule or school day, and the high school students don't. Many of these high school students are about to apply to colleges. Their grades, curriculums, everything is just not going to be an accurate representation of them. They need letters of recommendation from teachers, and it's going to be very hard to get a sense of a student when you're teaching asynchronously. So too many of those letters will be generic. So main questions for me is like busing. If the middle school and high school share a bus in the morning, why can't they share it in the afternoon? I don't understand why they have to leave at 11:50. The 2-week delay, when is that going to be made up? Is that going to be added back to the first semester? Is it going to be split between first, second semester? Because especially for classes like APs, you're missing 10 days. So, and I've already been told that some curriculums have been cutting, or some departments have been cutting their curriculums by a third. We can't lose another 10 days in the first semester if you're going to keep with that 4-4 split. And my other question is just, I don't understand why teachers cannot teach synchronously. It holds the teachers and the students accountable every day. They need to teach as if it's a regular day in school. Like I said, teachers are supposed to be paid to teach 7:15 to 1:45 at the high school. This will keep it on schedule, even if you're doing hybrid, distance learning, all of that. If it's hybrid, live stream the lessons. So overall, I just would like everyone to rethink the 4-4 split. I think it's extremely unnecessary right now. And I think we absolutely, at a minimum, must have synchronous teaching. That to me is a no-brainer. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. And so the answer to the question I was looking for, sorry folks, and thank you Mr. Waterman, is if you are on your cell phone and calling in on a phone, you dial *9 to raise your hand. So just want to make sure anyone even on the phone had an opportunity to do that. Next person is Kate Scott.
Hi, Kate Scott, 10 Jasmine Circle in Saunderstown. Good evening. Again, thank you everybody for all of the work that you're doing. I can't imagine how challenging this time is. I only know about the elementary school. My children go to Hamilton, and I am torn right now between distance learning and in school. Of course, I want my kids to be in school. However, having seen the hypothetical plans in my mind of how I picture their classroom with no papers and nothing personal and the desks far apart, they'll have to take, I'm imagining like coordinated lunch breaks, coordinated bathroom breaks. They won't be able to interact with anybody. I feel that more time needs to be given to these plans. And I can only speak for the elementary school. Considering safety, passing kids in the hallways, exposure, parent pickup. If anybody has ever been to Hamilton at the parent pickup time, it is a nut house on a regular day, much less when we've been asked to not put our kids on the bus and to parent pickup, which is fine. But now if we're going to increase the number of parents that are there, it just seems that the safety behind all of it is just, it needs some work. And if we could save some money perhaps by going distance learning for the first month, I think in the last meeting it was mentioned that it's $50,000 a month to do the COVID cleaning across the school districts, that if we could save some of that money somehow and possibly use it for other resources COVID related, that would be fantastic. Warwick has already put this forward and made the decision to be full distance learning for the first month. I don't know if they're going to be allowed to do that. I don't know what the legal ramifications are, but I don't know if it's also something that North Kingstown would be willing to consider and override. So again, thank you so much for all of your work, and I'm sorry to put you in these positions, but thank you.
Thank you. Next person is Sue Alexander.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, I'm Sue Alexander. I live at 211 Earl Drive. Agree with Bill Alexander, saying he's my husband, but which isn't always the case. So I've asked this question on several occasions and never really gotten an answer to it. I've emailed, I've asked on these town meetings. I look at my son, who's going to be a junior in high school, and I think, okay, he's going to have math every other day in person. And I use math as an example, probably because it's the hardest subject for him, but also because it's very systematic. I mean, we have lesson 1, we have lesson 2, we have lesson 3, we might have a quiz, we have lesson 4 or 5, we might have a test. It's everything's a building block in that. So on Wednesday, he's there Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Monday, he learns lesson 1. He goes home on Tuesday. I'm not a mathematician, but I can figure out in order for him to learn the entire curriculum in half a year, he would have to be teaching himself lesson 2. Because he couldn't just, if he had lesson 1 on Monday, went back in person and learned lesson 2 on Wednesday, there's just not enough time. So I want to know, is the curriculum being watered down for these kids so that they can accomplish what they think needs to be accomplished versus the entire curriculum? Because I have also been told by a teacher at the high school that they have taken a third of the curriculum out of the math for this current year because there's no way they can teach the whole thing in half a year, seeing kids every other day. I mean, I'm, again, like Mrs. Watson said, synchronous learning. I don't understand why on Monday he can't be in school learning lesson 1. A teacher could catch these kids up in a week to be on the same page. So on day 2, while she's teaching the other half of the high school lesson 2, he's at home listening to it. If it was synchronous, you could fit it all in. But when I read the kind of revamp after Ride made some suggestions, all it said was they were going to be, in school every other day, and then there was going to be teacher-led instruction for the days they were home. What is teacher-led instruction? To me, I'm thinking it's homework. So if they're not going to be live streaming anything, teacher-led instruction is, okay, I taught it to you on Monday, so you're going to do this homework on Tuesday. Like, I know when my kid goes to take his SATs and his PSATs this year as a junior, they're not going to care. I mean, they're not going to water down the SAT for my kid because he could only learn half of the curriculum. So, I mean, as much, and I know it's coming from RIDE for the elementary and middle school, especially the elementary, but we can't shortchange these kids. They're off to college. They're applying to college. They're taking their SATs, and they're not going to say, oh, well, North Kingstown only kept them in school for 4 hours a day, every other day. Shortened their classes, shortened the curriculum, watered it down. It's just so, so unfair to these kids. And I look at this plan and I think nothing in the high school plan has changed since when Dr. Auger first presented it in July for the first time. Nothing has changed for these high school kids. So we're being told we're listening, everything's on the table. But clearly it's not. I don't feel, as Mr. Mancini said earlier, engage the community. I don't feel like that's been happening. We're allowed to make comments and nothing gets answered. And, you can call me anytime and talk to me. I mean, I can call and have a 30-minute conversation with you and hear the narrative. But if we really want to work together to problem solve, as a former elementary school teacher, I'll tell you teach that from day 1, that groups solve problems together. So we've asked repeatedly, for a high school meeting to address some of these issues, and it's never happened. And it was told it was a possibility, is what Dr. Auger said in his first reopening plan meeting. So I urge you to just engage the community. I mean, this is their future. I mean, I can learn about the revolution in 5th grade, 6th grade, 8th grade, again in 10th grade, But pre-calculus comes once in a lifetime. And I'm looking at his summer packet that he has to do for pre-calc right now. Some of that stuff was not even taught to him last year. So he's already starting the year off by teaching himself. And I'm assuming that's because we ran out of time and didn't get to cover this topic or this unit or what be it. But that's going to be the rolling consequences of the kids in the high school that are being left to teach themselves. So either they're, by this schedule working out, on their off days, they either going to be teaching themselves or it has to be being a watered-down curriculum, because there's no other way to shorten the classes, go every other day, and fit the entire curriculum into half a year. So I'd like to know, which is it? Is it we're cutting the curriculum, or is it, yeah, but we're going to expect your kid to teach himself half of his pre-calc math class? I just don't get an answer to that. I mean, I don't think anyone wants to take responsibility to say it's one or the other, because it's clearly one or the other. So again, I just urge you.
We're way over, so thanks.
Thanks. Let's vote.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I don't see anyone else who has their hands up at this point. We'll wait another moment. Okay, so I'm going to move on the agenda. Next item.
Megan Chavit has her hand up.
Oh, I didn't see it. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mather. Megan Chavit, you just snuck in there. I didn't see it. Sorry.
No worries. Megan Chavit, 66 Charles Street. I just want to reiterate the high school concern. However, I would argue that a lot of these kids, or some of these kids, are not actually going to go to college, but they also deserve a top-notch education as well. However, the distance learning plan, I think, is going to be disastrous for these kids, especially the ones who are just not intrinsically or extrinsically motivated. So I do think that the idea of having a high school-specific meeting is a good one. I think that more ideas need to be put on the table than just the two that are out there right now, which is being in school and or distance learning only. I think there's other options we could review. So I do like what previous speaker said, a high school meeting to really get other parents involved and to elicit more opinions and ideas might be helpful. That's it.
Thank you. And then I did see another hand, Heather Murphy.
Good evening, Heather Murphy, 41 Mountain Laurel Way. I would also like to echo some of the concerns about decision making. It does not seem like the plan has evolved with new information. So for instance, my son got an email today to see who he would be bringing to school. You know, we don't even know how many people are going to be on a bus, but we've made a full plan based on the bus stuff. You know, that we can't get the kids bused home, so we have to send them home early. So we just don't feel like this plan is evolving with new pieces of information. We don't know, there's still people who may not have responded to the distance learning piece because they don't have all those details. And I also know of parents who are pulling their kids out completely and doing the Running Start program at some of our colleges. So those kids might be out. So again, I just feel like the plan is not evolving with new data. So I think you really need to take a look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so I don't see any more hands now, so I'm going to move on our agenda. Next item is the superintendent's report, so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ajay.
Thank you, Mr. Blaswell. You know, I made a presentation tonight, so I'm not going to go too deep into this. You know, I'm hearing the comments. I get your point. We will talk with Dr. Morse about getting more information about, you know, the hows and whys of the decisions that are being made at the high school. Like I said, I encourage people to give me a call. I've had lengthy phone calls with people and tried to explain the best that we can. You know, the decisions that we're making, a lot of it is just, you know, the logistics, whether that has to be the buses. I'm also very concerned about, you know, passing in the hallways of the high school with that many students. You know, I realize there are other districts that have a full in-person. There are also lots of districts in Rhode Island, double digits in Rhode Island, that have a 50% plan. And there are now districts that are starting to let us know that they have a full distance learning only plan. So there isn't, just a magic formula that every district can just, put in for them. We have to look at the logistics that we have. We're still the unknown number, for distance learning. The unknown number, we're still sorting out who is able to drive to the high school. Those things can help. But I can't promise that we're going to, I can change the high school schedule because of those numbers. And I certainly don't want to put anything out there that says, that we're, even considering it yet until I know it's something that I can do. I don't believe in that kind of communication. So as the more data comes in, and I apologize this is taking long, that's just the hand that we've been dealt. Those are the conditions we're dealing with this pandemic, and with the, the orders being given from the governor and the commissioner, and, the Department of Health, guidelines. We're working at this feverishly all summer long, and if we do find some opening to do, some of the suggestions that have been given tonight, we're going to look into them closely, and we're going to consider them, and we already have. I'm just going to leave it at that tonight. I know we've had a long night so far, and we've got a lot more to go. But again, if anybody feels like you don't have an answer to your question and you want to email me or call me, I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you.
Next are our routine items. So first, I'd ask for a motion to seal the executive session minutes of August 18, 2020. Motion from Mr. Mather. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Hildebrand. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. And I can disclose that no votes were taken in our executive session this evening. We have our consent agenda. Do any members of the school committee have any items they would like to exempt from the consent agenda? And hearing none, I would ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion from Ms. Hoskins. Do I have a second? Second from Ms. Hildebrand. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. So just on item E, so we approved the revised calendar that was imposed upon us by the state, and then they changed it, and now we have a new revised calendar that has been imposed upon us by the state. Dr. J, can you just speak quickly as to what we have before us? We're kind of approving this as a formality because they've told us what we have to do.
Yes, so the calendar has been switched to a September 14th start. There are extra days loaded into the end of the year, but there are 3 fewer overall learning days. So it's a 180-day calendar went to 177 day, and the quarters in the semester have been adjusted accordingly, to divide those days on the calendar. There are also increased professional days per the governor's orders. Up front. So that's all reflected on your calendar.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Phil, do you mind just mentioning or talking a little bit about the 7 staff-only days at the very beginning?
Sure. So North Kingstown has a contract with our teachers that is 184 days. So that there's 180 instructional days and there's 4 days that are built in for professional development reasons. We usually have them kind of smattered around the year. There's like 2 up front and then 1 somewhere around November and another 1 in the spring. That's the way we normally do it. In this case, we put those 4 up front because we realized we're going to need them there. The other piece of that is the governor's 3 days that she inserted in. So that makes a total of 7 professional days, and there are other days that there's professional time throughout the year for teachers. I think it's less now than it was originally because of the adjustment that's made, but so there are other opportunities as well for teachers to come back for professional development after the beginning of the year. But we felt with the union that it's best that we take care of those days up front. So that doesn't, make it hard to, work with the kids' calendar, which we have to stay true to. We didn't want to like bump out some of those days to insert other professional days in other places.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, Phil, so the 2 weeks didn't come off of the first semester. We adjusted the end date of the first semester.
Right, we adjusted.
Based on that. Okay,
I don't have that right in front of me to show you, but we did adjust it. So, whatever the midpoint is, that's where we put the semester date, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If I could get a motion to approve item E?
So moved.
Motion from Ms. Hoskins.
Second.
Second, Mr. Jones.
Greg, Mr. Chairman, I have one question.
Yes.
Dr. Day, can you, just looking at the state calendar, I noted, the SAT day, the testing day, is that, I assume that's part of the state assessment days, it's still in flux?
That I'd have to get back to you on. I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
Or at least I'm not aware of the answer. Dr. Masseri, do you have any insight on that one?
Sorry, I have not been looking at the SAT stuff right now.
We'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
So I have a motion and a second. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next, we have item F. I'm going to make a motion. So what I'm going to do is make a motion that we approve the NEA-NK MOA as amended. The school committee members have seen a version with the amendments that we have discussed. Any discussion or comments on that? All right, I made a motion, if I could get a second?
Second.
Okay, I'll give that to Ms. Hoskins. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. So unfinished business, we have 2019-20 school budget. Mrs. King, anything there?
No.
2021 school budget?
No.
CIP existing bond or future bond?
Just that our two projects are getting wrapped up at the high school and Davisville Middle School. They're getting wrapped up very nicely, and the contractors will be moving their stuff out in the next week or so.
Okay, thank you. And we have a policy read. So this is a new policy, so this is a first read. I'll make the point that one of the reasons we do 2 consecutive reads of policies is specifically to give the public the opportunity if they have any comments they would like to make. So anyone is welcome to take a look at this new policy. Dr. J, could you speak quickly as to what it says? And then let me get a motion first. If I could get a motion to approve item D1.
Someone?
I have a motion, Mr. Mather. Do I have a second? Second, Ms. Hildebrand. So, Dr. J?
Sure. So this policy has to do with the wearing of masks. The governor has, evolved on this thinking, and with the Department of Health is recommending that all districts have a mask requirement, and that's what we're looking to do here. In the event that a child is refusing to wear a mask, we will certainly work with that student and work with their parents. But we cannot allow that to continue. So if they're not, if we can't get compliance on that, we would have to have the student engage via distance learning.
Questions?
I don't have a question, but I guess I do have 2 comments. One thing that came up tonight with the masks that I'm not sure needs to be in a policy, but maybe is it more procedural, is what the child does with the mask while they're eating. Maybe that's on an individual basis when I could picture the elementary school children having issue with this when they're taking the mask off in order to have their lunch. Where does it go? Does it, falls on the floor? Like all those kinds of things. And then the second one is I saw this from another school that some schools have started already is children sharing masks.
That?
Yeah, obviously we would not encourage this, but it will probably happen as well. It was a parent whose child came home with a different mask on than what they went to school in. And just not sure if we need to cover that in a policy, but just something that we kind of need to think about.
Thank you.
Will do.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the first read, so we'll have to approve this one more time at our next meeting. Any other discussion? Then all those in favor? Aye?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. In your packet is the current personnel report. Any questions regarding that? Then if not, we've reached the end of the agenda. I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion from Ms. Hoskins. Do I have a second?
Okay.
Second, Mr. Mather. All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
And we are adjourned. We made it 6 minutes earlier than our stated end time deadline of 10 o'clock. Thank you all, folks. We try not to go this late, but we had a lot to work with this evening.